The new executive series would not be possible without the tremendous support of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our sponsors who have continuously supported the LVEDC mission during this time. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Lehigh Valley Health Network, our premier sponsor, Capital Blue Cross, our gold sponsors, BB&T Now Truist, Fitzpatrick, Lentz & Buba, and Penn Teledata. Our event sponsors, Crayola and Good Shepherd. Our interview sponsor, Follett. And our production sponsor, Countess Communications. We also would like to thank our host, ArtsQuest. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. We hope you enjoy the new executive series.
Hi, I'm Dr. Brian Nestor, President and Chief Executive Officer at Lehigh Valley Health Network. At LVHN, we offer nationally recognized care close to home. Today and every day, our focus is on the health of our community. We know that a healthy community paves the way for a healthy economy. We're proud to partner with Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation as we work together to make the Lehigh Valley strong, vibrant, and safe.
Hi, I'm Don Cunningham, President and CEO of the Lehigh Valley Economic Development Corporation. Thank you for joining us for our new executive interview series. In the last 18 months in the Lehigh Valley, we've had a record number of changes in the C-suite and the President and CEO offices running our companies, helping to shape our economy and our future of the Lehigh Valley. Today we have with us someone who's a longtime familiar face in the Lehigh Valley, but in a new role, and that is Matt Sorrentino. Matt is the President and CEO of Health Network Laboratories. Matt, thank you for joining us here today.
Thanks for having me.
And Matt, unlike many of our other guests on the series, you are far from new to the Lehigh Valley.
That's correct.
You have been here for almost your entire career,
yes.
I believe, right?
Yep.
And now running since the end of 2019 in the position of running Health Network Laboratories.
That's correct.
So I think for a lot of folks, people in the Lehigh Valley very familiar with Health Network Laboratories, but if you could just talk a little bit about the company, what it does, and when it got started.
It started in the late 1990s. It is a comprehensive diagnostic testing laboratory. We cover about 17 counties in Pennsylvania, from just north of Scranton to just north of Philadelphia, and from western New Jersey to just east of Harrisburg. The company has 1,100 employees, and interesting for our purposes, of those 1,100, over 40% of them have advanced degrees. It's a highly skilled workforce. We have about 2 million patient encounters a year, and that results in about 60 million individual tests each year that we report on and result for people. So it's as I said, it's an intellectual company. It's designed to be a scientific company. If you look at laboratory medicine generally, probably about 2 to 3 cents of every dollar that gets spent on healthcare is spent on laboratory medicine. But the decisions that 80% of doctors make are based on the laboratory medicine results that they get. So it's an important field, and so far in the Lehigh Valley, it's been thriving.
And Health Network Laboratories is connected to the Lehigh Valley Hospital Health Network system.
Yes, Lehigh Valley Health Network is the majority owner of HNL. There are 2 other investors in the company, local nonprofit. All of the ownership is nonprofit corporations.
And you've been involved from the inception, right? From the start in 1998
Yes.
with Health Network Laboratories.
Yeah, I did the legal work, and then probably about 5 years later ended up on the board of the company. And so for the last 15 at least years, I've been on the board of the company, so I'm familiar with its business and how it operates.
Right. So it was late last year, they asked you to run the whole operation, right? Not just the legal work.
Yes. Brian Nestor came in my office. We had a departure of the CEO at HNL, and Brian Nestor came in my office, and he's the CEO of Lehigh Valley Health Network, and he said, "How about if you go over and run HNL?" And I thought, well, this is this will be fun, it's temporary.
Right.
So I did that. That was about May of 2019, and by December, I was then the permanent CEO.
And then all of 4 months later, something changed.
Oh, yes.
With,
Yeah.
COVID-19.
Yeah, the world changed.
Yeah.
For everybody in
And
healthcare.
HNL
certainly.
was at the front of that. Right?
Yes.
And has been.
It was, in one day, our business went down and stayed down 60%, and literally overnight. And I remember talking to our scientific folks about the tests that need to be done for this virus, and actually talking to the Secretary of Health that day, and the Secretary of Health was telling us that Pennsylvania could only process 4 tests per day at that point. We at HNL could do
COVID tests.
for COVID tests.
Okay.
And we could do that. We thought, wow, we're in great shape. We can do 8 tests per day. Well, fast forward, by the middle of May at HNL, we were doing about 2,000 to 2,500 tests per day, and with relatively fast results.
Right.
So and now our business starting toward the middle of June. Our business is back to 100% of what it was before COVID hit.
So the full range of testing that under normal circumstances is back.
Yes.
In addition to COVID tests.
In addition to COVID, and it's important because I think a lot of people, a lot of patients put off getting their testing, put off getting their health care, and that was understandable with good reason. And but now they feel safer going back to healthcare facilities, whether it's LVHN or any other healthcare facility, or their doctor's office. They feel safer going back with good reason, because a lot of precautions have been taken, and so our business is back to what it was. Yeah, for sure.
So Matt, in order to accommodate a whole new element of testing with COVID and doing 2,000 a day, I mean, what did you have to do on the back end of the operation to process that?
Well, interesting, the instruments that we use are capable of testing for all types of viruses. In other words, the same instrument that tests for flu also tests for COVID. Okay, it's just different specimen collection and so forth. But the real problem that we've had, and frankly, you just pick up a newspaper and everybody else has had, is the assuring our supply lines. Right, we have the main supplies are what are called reagents, and swabs. The swab, is the thing that is put up in your nasal cavity, that's put into a tube with a reagent, and then sent to the laboratory for testing. Getting those reagents and getting those swabs became nearly impossible, to the point where at HNL we bought multiple 3D printers and started making our own swabs. And I talked to our scientists about, can you re-engineer or reverse engineer the reagents, and can we make our own? And we ended up doing that, and that helped. Now the supply lines have stabilized a little bit, but what occurs, which I don't think a lot of people in the public understand, is that the supplies are directed to wherever the hot spots are, not only by the people who make the supplies, but by the government. Under a number of statutes, one of which is the Defense Production Act, the government can say, you know what, things are really bad in Florida, things are really bad in Georgia. Okay. You send your production there. And so consequently, Pennsylvania, because we've done a good job, we pay for our own success in that regard.
Now, how about for the technicians to process the test? Did you have to add staff to handle the COVID period?
Not then, but we will be adding staff. And the reason is because when the business went down and we were doing mostly COVID testing, we had enough people. But now that everything's back up, we're recruiting for people now, for sure.
And you mentioned 1,100 employees in the Lehigh Valley, and that's a large workforce with a wide range of skills. So hiring, finding talent must be a regular part of HNL's business operation.
Yes.
And how are you finding it, or how much of an issue has that been? A lot of the Lehigh Valley schools now have, even the traditional 4-year liberal arts schools have added medical technician programs over the last decade or so.
It's a bit of a challenge, but this has always been an area that with the colleges and universities here, we've always had a highly skilled, I think, workforce compared to other places, and so we haven't had that much trouble, recruiting people. We have part of those 1,100 employees. We have 35 board-certified pathologists who do all types of other testing besides, COVID. We have some of those pathologists do autopsies. We do more autopsies than anybody in the state because we do them for other counties. Okay. So it's a multifaceted business, and I think people, when they come and see our facility, which is out near in the Airport Industrial Park, when they see the facility, they're pretty energized to come and work for us.
Yeah, that's great. And just shifting a little bit to you've had a kind of a non-traditional pathway to running a healthcare operation. So you came to the Lehigh Valley, you grew up in New York, New Jersey, and came to the Lehigh Valley to go to Muhlenberg College, right? Back
Correct.
in the 70s?
I graduated in 1970.
Yeah, okay. And then you...
I'm old, Doc.
Yeah. And you went off to Villanova Law School, right? Out of Muhlenberg, but decided to stay in the Lehigh Valley, right? And actually started your career as a probation officer in Lehigh County.
I did. Well, that was between college and law school.
College and law school.
The Vietnam War was on. I ended up going into the service. When I came out, couldn't afford to go to law school. Worked for almost 2 years for Lehigh County as a probation and parole officer, and then off to Villanova. And then back here again.
And back. So you've been, you and your wife Ronnie have been in the Lehigh Valley for a long time.
Long time. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and your career was as a very successful attorney, as the managing partner of the Tallman Hutters and Sorrentino law firm, which ultimately became Norris McLaughlin law firm. For that period of time was probably almost 30 years of practicing law.
Yes.
Yeah. With
those two firms,
long-serving stint as the chief counsel for Lehigh County.
That's correct.
Right.
Thanks to you.
Yeah. We were, full disclosure, we worked together when I was Lehigh County executive and hired Matt. And for a long time, though, during your law practice, you were chief counsel for Lehigh Valley Hospital.
That's correct. Lehigh Valley Health Network. Yes.
Health Network. Yeah. So you were a long time in healthcare law.
Yes. Yeah. It didn't start that way, but that's the way it transitioned.
Among many other things, government, banking, right? Yeah. Correct. So what is it at this, most people at this stage of life in their career maybe are, slowing down and not looking to take on new roles as president and CEO of 1,100 employee companies, and what has driven you to continue to shift to this kind of work?
Well, I left my law firm, Norris, in 2018, and in part because I just felt like I wasn't busy enough. I was certainly welcome to stay, but I felt like I could have been busier, and I thought that the legal job for Lehigh Valley Health Network would be a great segue or bridge to my retirement. What I didn't expect, what none of us expected, is what happened with HNL. And as I said, that was initially going to be a temporary assignment, and I was happy to do it for Lehigh Valley Health Network as the primary shareholder of the company. But when the pandemic hit, I just felt it was not, there'd been enough change in the company of leadership that it was not the time to change again. And things seemed to be going well, notwithstanding the pandemic. So the board asked me to stay on permanently as the CEO.
Well, and of course, as the managing partner, you were really the executive running the operations of the Lehigh Valley's largest law firm for a long time. So you were really in an executive capacity, just in a different sector, different business line.
That's correct. Yeah. And similar businesses in that you're always hunting out the best talent. It's you need to have really excellent lawyers in a law firm, and you need really excellent physicians and scientists in a company like HNL.
Yeah. What in the transition? What do you see as kind of the most different after a career running law firms and multifaceted legal work, and now focused every day on healthcare and laboratory issues?
Well, I think that, as I said, I think there are a lot of similarities, but having to keep up with the latest science, and and I have great people. It's not like I'm in the library, but just having to keep up with the science, having to make sure that our personnel are treated well, and that the company is functioning the way it should in really a difficult period of time for people. We still have many people. We have nobody on furlough. Everybody's back working, but a lot of it is working from home. And so what we're finding out is, like every business I believe is finding out, is that you don't need to be in the office all the time. As personally, I miss being in the office. I miss people. So.
Now, as far as, at some point the COVID situation is going to dissipate. We don't know when, right? So when you're looking strategically at HNL and the next year and the year beyond, what are some of the challenges that you have to look at? Because you kind of have to get through this period of COVID still. Right. And still be able to progress and implement all the other testing that needs to be done in the medical arena.
Yeah, so I guess the vision that I have for the company is really revolves around growth. This is a business where there are economies of scale, that if we can grow the company, then we can make it more valuable to the people who own the company. So I look at growth, and I look at talent acquisition. I've tried just in the 15 months. The first thing I did, quite honestly, and it turns out for me that it was the most valuable thing I did, was to basically change the management, the senior managers, and put in place a team that, had they not been in place, we would not have fared as well as we did so far through the pandemic. So I think it's important to have those scientists and physicians at the forefront of the company, and to use them to grow the company. And so far it's happening. In January, we took on our first hospital laboratory that's not part of the Lehigh Valley Health Network, outside of Philadelphia. And so I see more of that. The laboratory business is inundated with regulations. So small laboratories and small hospital laboratories have difficulty keeping up with the regulatory requirements. And so there are economies of scale to be found all over this business, and I think that's part of what we're trying to do.
Now, you said at the outset, how many counties are you operating in?
17.
17. Right. Okay. So some of that growth would maybe go push beyond even the 17 counties?
Yeah, it's possible. Yeah. Sure.
Yeah.
We have couriers. The way that specimens get back to the laboratory is with couriers, and we have our own fleet of couriers, vehicles and couriers, and we run about 2.5 million miles a year of courier time.
That sounds like it could be a good retirement job for me. I may call you if they...
We could do it together.
We can talk about the Yankees the whole time. Now, the process of getting tested for anything, any laboratory test, people have now become quite familiar with almost every shopping center close to their neighborhood having a testing center in it, which makes it very convenient. That's obviously a concerted strategy, right?
Yes, yes. It's a retail business, okay? And so you want to be where people are, doing their retail shopping, for example. We've tried, and I think it's finally taking hold, to make the experience at the patient service center contactless and as seamless as possible. You can go online at our website. You can find out what the waiting times are at different patient service centers. You can then check in at one of those on your phone, go to the parking lot, send a text into the patient service center saying I'm here, and then they'll text you when to come in so that you don't have to wait in a crowded waiting room.
Yeah.
And
did that start just during the COVID period?
Yeah, well, all the preliminary work had been done well before COVID, but we implemented with
And
COVID.
by the way, it works very well. I mean, I'm not saying this because you're sitting here, but LVEDC office is located on Avenue C in Shanersville, right by the Wawa.
One of our busiest.
So there's so there's one right on the corner there, next to Dickey's Barbecue, which I also frequent. But I will go in, and it's you never have to wait. I mean, it's just real smooth and easy and quick.
And that's one of our busiest centers. So not having to wait and having it be one of the busiest centers is really good to hear from me. So,
Now, do you know how many different retail locations like that there are?
yes,
around
we
here?
have 55 at this point. Yeah,
And would you expect in the future there to be even more?
I think so.
'Cause that's part
I
of
think so.
thinking
Yeah.
about the growth.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's very different than just even not that long ago where you kind of went to I can remember going to the central spot either at the hospital or at a designated facility of the hospital for your testing. This kind of dispersed strategy of being in every neighborhood, which seems to be kind of the formula behind a lot of healthcare services.
Yes. I think it's taken some time, but I think that healthcare generally has realized that a lot of the business is retail. You have to be where people are, where people go. And not everybody enjoys going to a large campus, having to find their way around that. So both doctors' offices, small health centers, what are called micro hospitals, even the Commonwealth has recognized a new category of hospital called a micro hospital. So these are small hospitals where you can get a variety of services. Now, if you have, if you're unfortunately suffering from cancer, you're going to have to go to a larger organization, within the area, and we have those. But for almost everything else, you can be treated at a micro hospital or a health center, and it has become a very retail-oriented business.
Now, is the laboratory business very competitive? I mean, there are other entities that you're...
Our competition, we have two major competitors who are the two major laboratories in the United States. They are the largest.
So their economies of scale are even better, right,
Yes.
in terms of cost?
Yes, and we work with them because, frankly, they're not terribly competitive in this geography. So we do work with them, to the extent that we can.
Yeah, yeah. So you're enjoying this chapter of the professional career.
Yes, I've been asked, do I want to go back to doing my legal job or would I prefer to stay at HNL? And I feel like I'm doing more good at HNL, and I am enjoying it. Yeah. How long? Who knows?
Who knows, right? Yeah, yeah. And for those who may not know you, even though you've been, I think, involved in so many boards in the Lehigh Valley, such a leadership role, contributing in so many ways across the region, I want to talk a little bit about you and your life for the folks who may not be as familiar with you. What are Matt Sorrentino's interests, passions, hobbies outside of running Health Network Labs?
Well, I play golf, or let me put it this way: I have golf clubs.
Yeah.
Whether golf actually occurs when I go out, that we can't predict that. So I'm also a competitive skeet shooter. I shoot very often. And those are and of course my family. I have two recent grandsons. One is 5 years old. One is 2 years old.
Oh yeah, congratulations!
Yes,
Yeah, that's great.
We're babysitting for them this weekend, and I'll have to go back to work to rest.
Yeah.
So
you have a son that's been in a retail
Yes.
fashion industry, and your daughter's followed in Dad's footsteps. She's an attorney at Norris McLaughlin.
That's correct.
Yeah, yeah. And where do the grandkids live?
In Montclair, New Jersey.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, which is kind of back to your original roots,
Sort of,
right?
yeah, back in that direction. I went to North Plainfield High School, which is not far from Montclair.
Now, you also left out one of your, interests and part-time interests is following the New York Yankees.
That's correct.
Yeah,
That's
and
correct.
I know we're not, as another fellow Yankee fan, we're really not allowed to say that here, and the Philly fans will get mad at us, but it's something that we share in common.
Yeah, well, they have a really good manager now in
Yes,
Philadelphia.
they do. And a good shortstop. Yeah.
So, but I am a Yankee fan. For many years I've had season tickets to the Yankees. Sorry that I haven't been able to go see them in person.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of sports fans are suffering that. So.
Yeah, and now over the years you've been involved in a lot of different entities and boards in the Lehigh Valley. The ones that come to mind that I remember, you were very involved with the Da Vinci Science Center for a long time.
Yeah, the Da Vinci Science Center, Communities and Schools of the Lehigh Valley, and that's a special one for me, only because it is, I was probably not on a trajectory in my early years that would have me sitting here talking to you today. I was not headed in that direction. And then a high school teacher got a hold of me. We had very similar background. She had just graduated from Hunter College in New York and grew up in New York, and we were both outsiders in North Plainfield, so to speak. And she determined that she was going to make me a student and teach me how to write, and all of that happened.
Right.
Thanks to her. But that's
and tell people a little bit what Communities in Schools does.
Yes, it's the largest dropout prevention program in the United States. And it's premised on the belief that one person can make a difference in the trajectory of a student's life. And in the Lehigh Valley, particularly with the Allentown School District and some of the other school districts, it's been very effective in keeping people, young people in school. The issues and problems that cause kids to drop out of school are just so many. And more now, and particularly in this kind of an environment. And so I think they do good work, and that haven't been on the board in years.
Yeah.
But I follow their progress.
Well, and your wife Ronnie was a teacher, right?
Yes, she was a teacher for 23 years at independent schools, the Swain School mostly, and also involved heavily in the community.
Yeah.
She has her own interests. She's been on the Boys and Girls Club of Allentown board and the foundation for years.
And of course, with Da Vinci was bringing science education to kids in a fun environment. So both you and Ronnie have been very involved in educational issues, and particularly for people with less fortunate and with challenges.
We tried, and one of my late partners, Bob Tallman, his philosophy was that we as lawyers had to give back to the community. We took all from the community. Our business depended on the community, and we had to give back. And I think we, as a group, learned that well.
Well, I think it's safe to say you've given back a lot, and they're continuing to give. I have a special fondness for your work and what you've done, and your family and your wife, and I was thrilled to see you move on into this next phase in Health Network Laboratories, and to have you on the show for people to realize how big of an employer. I mean, healthcare is our largest employer in the Lehigh Valley, with nearly 60,000 employees, and the variety of skill sets and job types that exist, as you mentioned at the outset, ranging from pathologists to technicians. It is our education system has such a good output in the Lehigh Valley to provide quality employees for that field. So it really makes sense, the amount of time you've put into education and what you're doing now, because the two go hand in glove, which I think is a large part of why healthcare has grown so large here.
Yes, absolutely. It is the number one employer, and I think the Lehigh Valley is lucky to have the level of healthcare that it has in the valley. Really.
Yeah, I mean, for a region that's growing, obviously, but the third largest in Pennsylvania with about 700,000 people, I think the overall healthcare availability here exceeds our size.
Yes, absolutely.
It's really like big city healthcare in a region that still maintains, I think, a small town feel, even though we're a growing metropolitan area. Yeah, and
Thanks to
and,
you.
and we'll continue to grow, right? I mean, and you're saying Health
That's the
Network
plan.
Labs is still continuing to
that's
grow.
the plan.
And thank you, Matt, for being with us for another episode of the new Executive Leadership Series. Thank you for our sponsors, and for those of you who have tuned in to learn a little bit more about Health Network Laboratories and our good friend Matt Sorrentino.
We're all doing what we can to stop the spread of COVID-19, and that includes wearing a mask when out in public. How you remove your mask matters too. Take it off from the back and be careful not to touch your eyes, nose, or mouth. Make sure to wash your hands when you're done. You should also wash your mask after each use. Keep masks you've worn in a sealed container until you can wash them. And remember, my mask protects you and your mask protects me.
The new executive series would not be possible without the tremendous support of our sponsors. Thank you to all of our sponsors who have continuously supported the LVEDC mission during this time. Thank you to our presenting sponsor, Lehigh Valley Health Network, our premier sponsor, Capital Blue Cross, our gold sponsors, BB&T Now Truist, Fitzpatrick, Lentz & Buba, and Penn Teledata, our event sponsors, Crayola and Good Shepherd, our interview sponsor, Follett, and our production sponsor, Countess Communications. We also would like to thank our host, ArtsQuest. Thanks again to all of our sponsors. We hope you enjoy the new executive series.